We are just waiting for some more people to join and then we'll be kicking off. So just give us a minute and we'll start. Thanks. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I think there are more people still to join us, but I think we should make a start and make the most of the time we have. Thank you very much for joining us today. I'm Andy Gouldson. I am one of the co-directors of the Yorkshire and Humber Climate Commission, and I'm going to give you a little bit of background and then chair the discussion today. We have a number of speakers who will be presenting on different aspects of the Climate Action Plan and our new platform, Commonplace, that we'll be using for stakeholder consultation on the action plan as we move forward. And there'll be time for Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions or points to put to the panel or to raise, please put them in the Q&A box rather than the chat. Then we will address them in turn as we get to the end of the hour. So to give you a little bit of perspective and background on what we're doing today, the Yorkshire and Humber Climate Commission is an independent body which was established 18 months ago with the support of the Yorkshire Leaders Board and all of the mayors and combined authorities and local authorities across the region, but also with active buy-in from other public sector agencies like the Environment Agency, Natural England, the NHS, Yorkshire universities, other private sector bodies, including Yorkshire Water, Northern Power Grid, Northern Gas Networks, and some of our major companies in the region, and also third sector groups like the CBI and TUC and Friends of the Earth and Community Energy England and the Yorkshire Wildlife Trust. So our goal is to support ambitious action on climate change across the region. And the first thing we were tasked with doing was to prepare a climate action plan for Yorkshire and Humber in time for COP26 in Glasgow last November. So we prepared this action plan, and I will give you a brief overview of it in a second. And really what we're talking about today is how to follow on from that, to dive into the specifics of how we actually get this action moving at the regional scale. And this is where we really want to hear from people and organizations across the region through our new platform to give us guidance and make sure that this is a document and an approach which is owned by everyone in the region and that everybody has their say in the process of formulating our next steps. So Millie, if you could go on to the next slide. So the Commission has 4 aims and objectives, and these are fed through into the action plan and into all of our activities, really. So the action plan, well, the Commission more broadly and the action plan seek to foster climate resilience and adaptation in the region. And we know all too well how significantly climate change is already impacting on us. You only have to look at the summer and the droughts, and the impacts that had on water, on farming, on food, even on our heritage buildings, for example, where drying land is leading to subsidence, undermining our heritage sector, to see that the region is really significantly impacted now by climate change. And as we move forward, even with best efforts at mitigation and lowering carbon emissions globally, we will still have to adapt to climate change. We also have the goal of promoting the region's transition towards net zero, and we have a target of getting to net zero by 2038, but showing significant progress by 2030. And obviously that involves massive changes in our energy supply, but also in our demand for energy, for transport, for housing, for industry, and so on. But we also want to work on nature and biodiversity and to address the ecological crisis alongside the climate crisis. So a third of our objectives is to focus on nature and biodiversity. And obviously that has knock-on implications for land use, again, for farming, for protected areas, and so on and so on. And then lastly, but by no means least, we want to do this in a fair and inclusive way that takes everyone with us on this process, and that certainly doesn't compound existing inequalities, but ideally would reduce those inequalities. And fuel poverty is the obvious example of that at the moment. So the climate action plan that we introduced came up with 50 key actions to address these 4 objectives. Millie, if you move on to the next slide. I won't go through these in detail, but some of these actions are cross-cutting actions that influence everything we do in the region. Including, for example, accepting that we're facing a climate and ecological emergency and acting accordingly, and then developing a positive vision of what Yorkshire and Humber could look like after we've responded to these crises, and hopefully showing how our response to climate and nature can make the region a happier, healthier, more prosperous, more inclusive region to live in. And then there are multiple others, which I won't go into, relating to finance, for example, to jobs and skills, to education, to nature and green infrastructure, and so on. So what we're doing now is working to flesh out what these actually mean and what we can do in a practical way to address these points across the region. And then the next category of actions, Millie, if you go on to the next slide, is around climate resilience and working out exactly what we can do to make ourselves less vulnerable and more resilient as a region, including through better communications, the development of climate adaptation plans, by integrating climate into health and well-being, or restoring our natural assets to protect us from future climate change. And then lastly, on net zero, Millie, if again you move forward, we have a series of actions set out in the action plan around introducing 5-yearly carbon budgets, strengthening our energy networks, promoting community energy, decarbonizing energy supply, and so on and so on. So the action plan is quite extensive and it's quite broad. But what we're doing now, as I've said, is to have a deeper dive into some of those key areas. And the 2 we're starting with are around retrofit, but also around sustainable food systems in the at the regional scale. But these are just the first 2 of a year-long series of events where we will be convening what we're calling delivering impact sessions, where we draw together members of the Commission, other experts to say, well, what does global best practice look like? And where are we now in the region? What more can we be doing to action some of these priority areas? And practically, what are the key steps we need to take and who needs to be taking the lead on those? So those sessions will be all filmed, and the films of those sessions will then be put onto our new platform for people to view. And there will also be a supporting write-up of those sessions, which people can read. And then we're after your thoughts and comments. We really want this to be an open, inclusive process where people feel like they've had their say in this as we move forward. When we did this previously for the Climate Action Plan, we had 500 stakeholders feed into that. But as this is so much longer and so much more detailed, we needed a better way of doing it. And hence, we've worked with Commonplace, who are experts in providing these kind of platforms, online platforms, to enable people to comment on things like this, to develop our new approach, which is what we're launching here today. So what we're going to do now is introduce you to Commonplace, and we have Amy Hazelhurst here, who's been working with us and supporting us, and who works with Commonplace on what this platform looks like. We then have presentations from Sam Herbert, Sam is an engagement and impact officer with the Commission who will be introducing the first of our conversations around sustainable food. And then similarly, we have Kat Armstrong, who also works with the Commission, who will be introducing our retrofit conversation and what we can do to improve energy efficiency across the housing stock in the region. Then we'll hear from Catherine Graves, who's been developing the platform, who will give a demonstration of what it looks like and how we'll use it. And then there's an opportunity for Q&A, and we'll try and answer as many of your questions as we can at the end. And then we'll be done by 6 o'clock. And, we'll also introduce next steps and let you know what's happening down the line as we move forward. So I hope all of that makes sense. We're looking forward to hearing from you later, but before we get to you, we're going to run through those presentations. And the first one is from Amy Hazelhurst from Commonplace. Amy.
Thank you, Andy. That was great to see more as to where we've gotten to with the climate action plan so far. Before I get going, can I just get a nod from you, Andy, to say that you can see my slides? You can? Fantastic. Okay, well, thank you so much for inviting me to talk to you guys today. My name's Amy Hazelhurst, and I've been working with Commonplace now for about 1.5 years in getting these kind of conversations off the ground. We're a digital engagement platform. We're the UK's leading provider of that. And as of last week, we hit 6 million people who have come to a Commonplace platform and commented. We're about to launch 2,000 projects by Christmas, and a vast majority of those are now climate conversations, such as the one that's about to take off today. So if we look at public consultation a little bit more widely then, and I can tell you a little bit more about why Commonplace has come to be and why it's so important that people engage in this way now. Research that we did back in 2020 found that actually only 27% of people have ever taken part in a public engagement. And when we asked why, we found that half had said that they'd never even heard about the consultation. So those 500 people that were consulted on the plan last time, we want to, of course, make that much wider. 27%, only 27% of those actually feel like they have any influence. So is it even worth commenting? And actually over half believe that there's a lack of transparency anyway, that decisions are made about these sorts of topics in secret to avoid public backlash. But of course, that's what we're trying to change. Ultimately, what we're also finding from that research was that actually over 70% of people do want to be involved in this process. They want to hear about the plans that we have going forwards on topics like this. And actually what they want to see, and this is the critical bit, this is what's so important about the way that Andy and the team are taking this consultation, is that actually people want to be engaged ongoing. So we want to move away from that episodic one-off consultation style that then is only reviewed once every 5 years, to actually that being an ongoing conversation that we can have with a much wider, much more diverse audience, both in terms of age range, ethnicity, areas that they might live, and economic status as well. So let's just have a quick review then of what meaningful engagement should look like. So I've just mentioned about it being a conversation more than a one-off survey style, that it should be a process rather than just an event. And actually that through doing that, we can build trust, we can engage a much wider group of people in the conversation, and people are 5 times more likely to come back and contribute in a way, doing it that way. And what it really allows us to do is to be able to speak to the silent majority. So rather than the people that you're speaking with having a genuine passion, it might be the Friends of the Earth, the Extinction Rebellion people, those that were already engaged in that conversation, you can hear from people like me with a family who's also working, or those who are traveling from A to B and just filling out that consultation on their phone just quickly. And it's about building that trust. And actually in Andy's opening statement, he said that what we're wanting to do through this is to make it a fair and inclusive process, an open process. And I hope you will all go on and have a look and contribute your ideas to the Commonplace platform. But what you'll see is that you can see the other comments that have been made as well. So it's open, it's transparent. You can agree with other comments that you think are useful for you. So I guess this is my call to action when it comes to this stuff. It's about getting the digitally engaged, civically engaged. 15 years ago, before these sorts of platforms existed, the only types of consultation we were doing were those that were already civically active. But now there's this platform to be able to have these conversations online. We can bring the digitally engaged, civically engaged in these conversations as well. And that includes people, younger people that wouldn't have engaged in the topic already. It might also include people where English is not their first language, because they can translate it on their phone and engage that way. And that's what we're hoping to do through this one as well. Just to quickly talk through some of the conversations that we've done in the past then. So climate conversations has become a big thing for Commonplace. We've launched them in different parts of London, in Manchester, in Glasgow as part of COP26, and now in Yorkshire as well. It's been a huge thing since the climate emergency started being announced by local authorities back in 2019. And this will be another great big conversation of that sort. And ultimately, just to run through what we're able to do here, this is about co-designing our solutions for the future. So we've got the action plan. We want to look at how that's actually resonating with people, but co-design it, co-own it, and get that deeper engagement and greater accountability as a whole. So we can crowdsource ideas for the future. You can use the interactive heat map that I know Catherine's going to take you through in a little bit. We can see the iterations of the plan. We can see the way in which it's developing over time, over the year that this project is going on. We can have a much more diverse and open conversation with a much wider section of society, but also that's dynamic. So if we're finding we're not hearing from certain people in Harrogate, then we might want to put some resources there, or Hull haven't contributed, we can put resources there. We can encourage the conversation as we go. We can see the entire history of the project in one go, and hopefully the aim is to build trust within the community through that. And I'll end on this then, Andy, is just to say that we're also doing a conversation with the new North Yorkshire local authority, and we had this feedback come through. I truly hope you get the same kind of feedback through this project as well. We heard from Jim here, who you never know might be on this call, who said, "I simply want to say how impressed I am with the way that you are canvassing the views of North Yorkshire and keeping us updated with progress. My wife and I recently moved to the area from Scotland, and we really appreciate being asked our opinion rather than told what our opinions must be." And I think that's critical of the type of project that we're hoping to enaction today as well. So I hope that's given you a good flavour for the type of things that we can do through digital engagement with Commonplace, and the types of things that we're hoping to do here today as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amy. That's excellent. Also, just a reminder to everybody here, if you have questions, please do post them in the Q&A box at the bottom. And questions for Amy particularly, we'll come back to at the end, so that there will be a chance to ask people. But for now, we're going to move on to hearing from Sam Herbert. As I said earlier, Sam is a key member of the Yorkshire and Humber Climate Commission and is working on the climate resilience, but also on land, water, nature and food. So Sam's going to talk to us today about one of the main areas where we're seeking consultation and your input now, which is around sustainable regional food systems. So Sam.
Thanks, Andy. Can you see my screen okay, just to check?
Yes. Okay.
Super, thank you. Yeah, so as Andy said, I'm going to talk to you about one of the first subjects that we're going to be launching on the Commonplace platform, and that is an exploration into our food system. So I'll tell you a little bit about that today. I think Andy talked a little bit about our panels, and this particular topic fits within the remit of our land, water, nature, food panel. And that's exploring the many elements that impact land use in the region and how these need to evolve. So other areas the panel will explore include things like nature's recovery, the role of land in nature-based solutions in climate mitigation and reaching net zero, and things like living with water in the landscape. And for each of these topics, the panel holds, as Andy mentioned, a delivering impact session. And that's an online discussion where the panel members and subject experts will come together and talk about the key issues, challenges, and start to think about some of the actions that we can be taking in the region. And as Amy was saying when she was introducing Commonplace, it's very important that we keep these conversations open in an ongoing way. And so being able to engage people through the Commonplace platform on each of these subject areas means we can keep that bigger conversation going throughout the subject areas that the panel's exploring over time as well. So we'll talk a little bit about the issue that we're dealing with here. So the first of the sessions that the Land, Water, Nature, Food panel has looked at was exploring what a sustainable, secure food system for the region might look like. On Commonplace, you'll be able to watch recordings of 2 key speakers we had at the session. One of those was Chris Clark, who was a farmer and is now a consultant in farming. And he's developed a methodology for finding balance between profitability and recovering nature in farming. And one of the other speakers was Chris Yap, Dr. Chris Yap, who's a research fellow with the Fix Our Food programme. And the Fix Our Food programme explores a way of transforming the region's food systems. And that's quite a sort of, obviously an important input to what we're talking about here. You'll also be able to read up on the full discussion that went on around the delivering impact session, and that outlines what detail is in the context of the challenge and what challenges there are within our current food system. So like some of the information you can see on the slide here about people experiencing food insecurity in the region, some of the impacts of our production and consumption practices and the impacts they have on nature and climate change. And the report that you can read on Commonplace looks at why those things aren't changing at the moment in the region, and then proposes a number of possible actions that could help us to evolve the regional food system. So we've emphasized this already, but what we want to make sure we're doing here is having an iterative process where we're getting a conversation going that will help us to build and share ideas to date and get lots of feedback on those. So it's important to emphasize that the written papers that you encounter on Commonplace are not the final product. They're designed to share thinking and ideas to date. They're designed to get feedback, be interrogated, and to have the ideas built upon. And this is so we can shape a really rigorous position paper and outline any high impact actions for the Commission. So we know we're really putting our emphasis where it needs to be. The food systems paper, for example, draws on academic input, expertise from the panel and Commission members, insight from the delivering impact session that we've just talked about, the speakers that we just mentioned, existing projects and initiatives in the region and where we can learn from elsewhere. And moving forwards, we'll incorporate the insight garnered from the conversation that we have on Commonplace. So, for example, the image that you can see here on the screen is from the Let Us Grow project, and that's part of the collaboration between York University and the Grow at York programme, and that's exploring urban food production. So getting more insight on initiatives like that can help us to understand what's already happening in the region and what we can be building upon. One of the key things we'll be asking for feedback on is the big themes and ideas and outlines that are actioned in the draft reports. So in the food systems discussion, themes emerging from the conversation today have led to some proposed key principles that could shape a more resilient and inclusive food system in the region. So you can see those outlined here. So through Commonplace, we're asking whether these principles feel right for the region and whether there's anything that could be added to them. The report will then go on to suggest possible actions for the region, and as you'll see when we go through the platform Commonplace again, there are a number of questions that will ask for feedback on these actions and which ones feel like priorities. They're grouped into higher level categories for the feedback survey, so like the ones you can see on the screen here, but there's also a free text box included, so you can comment on the more specific ideas that go into more detail outlined in the report, or the existing projects and initiatives that are being drawn upon as best practice. So again, the conversation will help us to understand what wider views are on the proposed actions, where people are seeing the priorities and what we might be missing. So really what we're looking for is a wide range of feedback. We are interested in getting as much input from experts in related subject areas, so that might be academic or practical. We also want as much insight as possible from people living in the region and how the ideas and actions that we're proposing relate to real life, whether you feel the approaches that we're outlining are actually going to address the needs that are happening in real communities. And what we want to gather as well is more examples of best practice and what's already going on so we can keep building on what's happening. So you'll see when you go into the Commonplace platform that the survey is designed to be as simple as possible to complete. But if you do have more detailed input that you'd like to add, there is room to do that. And you can also upload documents that you think might be useful in helping us to progress our understanding. So that's everything I'm going to talk to you about in terms of food systems. Thank you very much. I'll hand over to Kat to talk about the other area of retrofit that we're going to be posting.
Thanks, Sam. So let me just share my screen. not used to Zoom, so I'm a bit worried I'm going to press the wrong thing. Let's go. Let's see. Perfect. So that's great. Okay, so the second report that you'll see when you get onto the Commonplace platform is on retrofit. So that's the topic that I've been exploring with the Net Zero panel. And we're trying to answer this question. So what can we do in the region to make sure everyone's home is warm and healthy? And I've picked a picture here of someone kind of looking warm and cozy. And I'm especially thinking about this at the moment, working from home. I've not turned my heating on all day. I've been absolutely freezing. It's something that's kind of at the front of everyone's minds at the moment as we're really getting into winter. And similarly to Sam, exactly the same format as Sam, this report is based on a delivering impact session with our Net Zero panel that was held on the 12th of October 2022. And it was run by the Net Zero panel. So the Net Zero panel, we're looking at kind of everything that's related to carbon emissions and the solutions that are connected to reducing those greenhouse gas emissions in within the region. So that's looking at retrofit, new build standards, transport, our energy networks, and really, again, like I said, answering that question of what can we do as a region to tackle these issues. So retrofit, I'm sure you will have heard of it before, but retrofit means upgrading and improving our homes to make them warm, cheaper to run, and lower carbon. It's technology like insulation, solar panels, heat pumps. These are all part of retrofit. And you can see this lovely picture here from the Energy Sprong project in the Midlands. And you can really see that contrast between the house before and the house after and what big difference it makes visually. But it's also about kind of the experience for people who are living in homes. You know, we all want a warm home. We all want to be able to run our home and keep it warm for a price that's affordable. And we also need to reduce the carbon emissions that are coming from our gas boilers. So these solutions like insulation, solar panels, heat pumps as a replacement for gas boilers, they're all a big part of retrofit. And putting the numbers on it, analysis shows that retrofit would save homeowners on average £345 a year in bills. And a really, really important part to say about retrofit is the scale of the challenge. It is absolutely massive. I've heard recently in webinars similar to this that it needs to be one home every second from now until 2050. Although I have heard 1.5 homes, 2 homes every second, but it's a huge challenge and it's going to take massive coordination across the entire country. But it's also a massive opportunity, and that's what we want to make the most of with the regional action that we're doing. How can we make the most of this challenge, of the new jobs, the new skills, the new businesses that are going to come out of this, and make the most for the economy of the region? I think that's a really, really important part of this. So the paper has started to kind of develop a bit of a framework for change, and the action, starting to define the action that needs to be taken on all levels. So starting at the individual, every single home is unique and needs to be looked at on a case-by-case basis. Every home needs to be assessed separately. That's part of the complexity of it, of the challenge. And part of the solutions to retrofit is that it has to happen locally, essentially, and it is happening locally in our homes and our neighbourhoods. And a big part of the solution is local authorities, local businesses, local communities, and making sure that local communities that retrofit is delivered for the needs of local communities at the centre. And our regional position that we're starting to define is kind of between the local and the national in supporting local interventions and action, sharing best practice, advocating for local needs, and then developing key asks of national government to get things moving. And as Sam has said, that the paper starts to outline where we are now as a region on retrofit for this one. And it's really a start to this process that we're starting to develop, and we need your views and your input to improve it, basically, make it more rigorous. So we've structured the thinking around the different routes to retrofit, which are based around the tenure types. So that's kind of who owns the house, and what the ownership model is. So the four main ones are getting whole street or neighborhood retrofit moving. That is, if we want to do this at scale, and we want to do this quickly, one of the best ways of doing this is by looking at a whole street or looking at a whole neighborhood and doing that in one go, which needs massive amounts of coordination, but it's the one that's going to get things moving quickly. Encouraging more ambitious retrofit of social housing. This is because there's finance out there for social housing, and we can really get that moving quickly, and our role is to support that, and we're defining actions on how we can get that moving. Incentivizing higher standards in the private rented sector. The private rented sector has got some of the worst housing conditions in the country, so we've really got to try to tackle what does the finance mean, and what are the routes for that. Enabling homeowners to retrofit their own homes. People also want to do retrofit. That's one of the things that we've discovered. There's a massive desire for people to do it, and we have to make sure that we're meeting that demand, essentially. So these are some of the regional actions that you will see when you read the paper. You can read the actions in more detail in the paper, and also how we came to these conclusions. And the ask is, can you help us build on these and help us to move our thinking on it? So the actions that we've come out with, some of the kind of headline actions are, so mapping regional activity on retrofit to help us understand where we kind of what best practice looks like and what action is happening. Supporting councils to deliver neighbourhood retrofit, like I said, whether that's kind of through their planning or through the people that are working on it. Helping retrofit businesses to grow and expand, supporting retrofit startups for homeowners, developing ways to finance retrofit, communicating the need for retrofit, developing better incentives for retrofit, and helping embed retrofit practices in contractors' work. So those are some of the key regional actions that we've come up with. Take a look in the paper, and you can learn more about how we got to this conclusion. So just the final kind of slide on what we need from you, similar to what Sam has said, but I'm just saying it in a slightly different way, is that we need your views and your input, whether you are a professional and you're working in this area, or you are just someone who lives in a house. We really want to hear what you think on the work that we've done to develop the thinking. So think about, what should be the priority areas? Which ideas do you think would work? We're trying to sense check these a little bit. Are we missing anything? Could these things work from your perspective? Just give us your 2 cents and help us shape our regional approach. I think I'm not doing questions on my, so I'll end the slideshow.
Not quite yet, Kat, but we'll come back to those. Thanks. So thank you, Sam. Thank you, Kat. So the key points here are that we really want to hear from people from across the region, from organisations and individuals, community groups, everybody. And these are the 2 areas that are live on the Commonplace platform already. But to show us what that platform looks like and how to input, we're going to hear from Catherine Graves now. Catherine's been developing work in this area for the last few months. So Catherine.
Lovely, thank you. I will just share my screen and just have a really quick whiz through what the platform looks like. So I think the link might be shared in the chat as well for you to all hopefully look on and contribute to this evening, which would be great. So that link takes you to this landing page, and this is where all of the consultations over the next 12 months will appear. And if you scroll down, each consultation will appear as a separate tile under the Have Your Say section. On this homepage, we have a brief timeline, which, as Andy referenced at the beginning, we're covering a whole range of specific issues. So these will be updated as we go through and as the delivering impact sessions occur. And we also have a latest news section, which is where we will keep everyone updated with the progress of the reports. It will be where each conversation gets announced every time that they're launched. So please do kind of sign up to kind of get the news alerts. So every time we upload something, you'll be notified of that, and you have the opportunity to contribute to the conversation. So as I said, the tiles here are where the conversations occur. We have a little introduction to the Yorkshire and Humber Climate Action Plan, a bit more of details to what Andy was talking about earlier, and some of the documents associated with that in a range of different languages as well. And I'll just take you through, so this is the map function that Amy referenced earlier. So the idea behind this map function is we're hoping to kind of gauge and gather a whole range of projects and initiatives and climate action that's going on across the region. And it'd just be really great to hear some of your local success stories, basically give you an opportunity to share the positive climate action that's been taken across the region. So the idea is to develop this resource, and it's kind of hopefully will be open for the next 12 months as the conversations are open. So it will be built up as people contribute. So be a resource for residents and businesses alike, so people can know what's going on in their area. They can then look to see what opportunities there might be to contribute to climate action in their area. So some people have already contributed already, which is amazing because it only launched today. So there's an example here of something in York, which is about Planet South Bank. So as you click on, if you want to contribute to this, you click on Have Your Say, and these questions appear, getting a bit of a sense check about, a sense of how you feel climate action in your area is going, and gives you an opportunity to share information about any projects or initiatives that are going on. Also gives you opportunity to upload any pictures, which might be a nice way of sharing kind of successes in the area. And also an opportunity for you to share what climate impacts you are concerned about in your local area. So hopefully the idea is that over the 12 months, this will be full of pins with excellent climate action that's occurring across the region. So that's the map function, and that will be open for the full year. And these, so as you can see, the retrofitting and the food systems consultations are open. So I will just click through to show you how you can contribute to these conversations. So we've already had 25 contributions already, which is amazing. So this starts off with a little introduction to the context, what the scale of the issue is, and what potentially the options are. As Kat and Sam outlined, their regional climate action report is here if you would like to read that in full, but they've got a small summary here with the key takeaways and the key actions, the core principles that came out from that delivering impact session. So what we've got here, we're keen to kind of find out your thoughts about the issues themselves. Sentiment questions is what the commonplace terminology is, as Amy will describe. So we start with these sentiment questions so it's useful for us to also hear what perspectives we're gathering, so in what capacity you're responding. So this helps us to ensure that we're gathering and we're reaching a range of different groups with these conversations. We are keen to get a sense for how important these issues are for you at a regional level. These reports will identify some key principles which will come out of the delivering impact sessions. So we want to hear your ideas about whether these seem right for you, and like Sam and Kat say, what we might be missing, a sense check of these. So this is this section. So it's about order of importance and your priorities, whether these seem right for you. Also about what you might think is feasible and what are relevant to you as well. And like Kat and Sam say, there's an opportunity here for you to share any more detailed feedback which you might have, ideas, suggestions. Very much this is all about transparency and a conversation, so feel free to write as much as little or as you would like. And there is the opportunity to upload any relevant files as well. if you're super keen, there is an opportunity to watch the Delivering Impact session in full there, to hear from the experts, which underpinned the reports that have been written. So as you go through these, if you click next, this will, the first time you complete one of these surveys, it will take you through to a demographics question, but that only needs to happen once. After that, it will have saved your data essentially, so you don't need to do that again. One of the key features of Commonplace is that you're able to see what other people have said. So if you click on the responses, you get to see other people's feedback, which is really interesting to have a look through. And you get to agree, kind of upvote people's responses as well. So it's all about transparency. So that's a quick whiz through what the conversations will look like, and these will appear as tiles as we go through. And yes, just please do contribute. I think the link will be shared tonight if you haven't received it already, and please do sign up for notifications so you get informed every time we upload a new conversation. I'll pass back to Andy.
Thank you very much, Catherine. So the headline messages coming through from this, we really want to hear from you through the Commonplace platform. Give us your feedback, not only on the ones that are up now, but follow us, and as more and more of these sessions come online, more and more opportunities will come through for you to feedback and feed in your ideas as well. Everything you feed in will go back into producing another version of the proposals. The proposals will then go back to the Commission, and in March 2024, we'll be launching a kind of state of the region report where we set out our action plans, and hopefully then that they will lead into the Commission's activities moving forward. I say hopefully because the Commission was set up for 3 years in the first instance, and we're still working to secure what happens on from March 2024. But in broad terms, if you feed in, it will be considered in the process. It will feature in our thinking and the development of the ideas that then go on, hopefully, to shape practice in the region as we move forward. There is a QR code on the screen now, if you need that to access the Commonplace platform. But you can also, as Kate has said in the chat, just click the link. And now you've registered for this event, you'll be on our mailing list as well if you've consented to that, and we will be sending you more details too as things move forward. The other key aspect is to flag up all of the climate action initiatives emerging across the region. We really want to have that map with thousands of pins on it, showing just how much is happening, and enabling people to connect and share best practice and good ideas across the region. So please, if you're involved in some way in a climate program or a nature program, please do go online and use that map function to show what's going on across the region. Okay, we now have some time for questions and answers. We will try and work our way through as many of these as quickly as we can. I will hand out some of them to the speakers from the panel earlier, but I can deal with the first one if that's all right, which is around North York's County Council having declared the biodiversity emergency. I'm not sure of the answer to that one, to be honest. We are in the process of reviewing what all of the local authorities are doing, and our climate action pledge, which we launched a couple of weeks ago, is there to promote action, including on nature and biodiversity. And we will be asking North York's County Council, although it's about to evolve, isn't it, into York and North York's combined authority, obviously to consider signing that. Our next question is from Jim. Jim has asked about meat consumption in schools. Sam, I wonder if that one relates to food, if I could hand that back to you to consider.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Andy, and thanks, Jim, for the comment there. Yeah, I think this is exactly the kind of issue that we want people to be commenting on when we looking at the Commonplace platform. The report on food systems does look at dietary nutrition rather than kind of the diet that we've got at the moment. So this is an area that we do start to explore as to whether people would move to a more plant-based diet, how that might be implemented. So these kind of thoughts around, ways that we could start to implement that in the region are really helpful. So yeah, just a really valuable comment. Thanks very much, Jim.
And Jim, we have been working with the Yorkshire Purchasing Organisation and others on this question of purchasing and reducing the climate impact of the government spend, which I completely agree can be huge. The next question is from Peter Greaves, asking about kind of normal temperatures and recommended internal temperatures. I'm not sure we recommend anything in particular, but obviously turning a thermostat down can have a massive impact on your energy bill and your carbon footprint. Kat, would you like to address this a little bit more?
Sorry, I was just unmuting myself. I would say exactly the same thing, Andy. I think the temperature that I hear is 19 degrees, but I think we just always recommend turning your thermostat down from extremely high. I don't think I've got much else to add to that. I suppose tackling the retrofit challenge, I think is looking wider than that. I think historically, we've been giving advice for reducing carbon emissions, that kind of actions that homeowners can take to kind of small things like turning your thermostat down. But retrofit obviously tackles the challenge at a much wider and kind of in a more long-term way. Temperature controls are also a really important element too. Things like heating separate homes, and they're part of the retrofit solution too.
Thank you, Kat. Our next question is from Steve Mason about local authorities and procurement again. I'd refer back to the comment we made a minute ago. We have a future session coming up on consumption and procurement and others on SMEs and business support. And I think this is a key consideration. And obviously we would be pushing, and our climate action pledge pushes organizations to think about procurement and how they can better support SMEs in this process. So Steve, I hope, even if that's not a full answer, it gives you some sense that we are working on this one. Next one is around from an anonymous attendee. Sorry, I haven't got your name, but asking about confidence in solar panels and whether we might be able to offer any assurance. Again, Kat, as that kind of relates to retrofit, but would you be able to tackle that one?
Yes, absolutely. I think it links as well. I've been thinking about this one actually, because it does link to the second one, the one that comes after that, which is about quality. And this is something that has been a really big part of the discussion, actually, about people need to know that when they are getting retrofit done on their home, that it is being done by someone trusted, that the contractor is reliable, and that they know that they're getting quality work. And there are various different solutions to this. One of the big solutions that's talked about a lot is one-stop shops. One-stop shops are places for trusted and essentially independent advice on retrofit that can help homeowners go through that journey on retrofit and get advice on contractors. However, one-stop shops don't necessarily have to be a lot of. Usually it's talked about as kind of local authorities or public sector bodies who would be the ones delivering retrofit. But I think they can be delivered by different people. Local authorities are in a great position to do so. But if you watch the video, if you're going to watch the video from the Delivering Impact session, you can see a talk by People Powered Retrofit and Carbon Co-op. And they're a community interest group. They are a sort of community retrofit, and they provide help and advice for people on that retrofit journey. So part of our role regionally is to help these kind of local one-stop shops start to form and make sure that they're formed in a way that kind of provides that quality assurance. Another element as well that we discuss in the paper is around logbooks. And logbooks are a solution where kind of homeowners can record the changes that are made on their homes. And that's another way of kind of maintaining quality assurance. But that's a really big area to tackle, and maybe it's something that's best done at the national level. We're not sure, but hopefully we can kind of look into it in more detail.
Thank you, Kat. Our next question is from Andrea Armstrong, which is around the risk of extreme heat and drought for both retrofit and sustainable food. Obviously, this is a question about climate impacts and risk and resilience and adaptation to some extent. And just to be clear on the retrofit side, although maybe the main focus is on net zero and carbon emissions, the question of how we make our homes more resilient, including to flooding and extreme heat and so on, is absolutely part of the conversation. But Sam, could we come back to you on this on the food side and talk a little bit about resilience in farming?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, again, something that we're looking at within the food systems report is resilience in farming, and a number of sort of actions that need to happen in order for that to be the case. And that's, you know, looking at things like regenerative farming techniques and how we can bring in more kind of nature-based farming that will help to build resilience, improve soil quality and that kind of thing. In terms of the risk of extreme heat and drought, we've got a couple of sessions coming up in the future which will also explore those things. So we have a session within our climate adaptation and resilience panel who are going to be looking specifically at preparation for extreme events and crisis response. And then I think it's towards October next year, we're going to be looking specifically at food systems and water systems through the climate adaptation and resilience panel. So those will be areas that we'll be digging into in more detail later next year. So hopefully a good opportunity to feed into those reports later in the year next year.
Perfect. Thanks, Sam. Our next comment from Stuart Boothman is a broad one about inclusivity, really, and diversity, and how to reach out to communities that don't normally engage with climate conversations. I wonder, Amy, whether we could ask you a little bit about how Commonplace has addressed this issue and, you know, broadened the range of people feeding into consultations in other instances, and what we can do to address this question.
Yeah, thank you, Andy. It's a really great question, and it is one that comes up a lot. I think ultimately there are certain movements that we can get off the back of now, and the technology has been set up to move with those. So thinking about social media, the platform can be shared really, really easily, and making sure that you're doing that on different community groups, but equally just setting up so that you're actually communicating to the right audiences as well, if you want to do it going down that ad spend route. But also, I mean, sharing it with your local institutions. So WhatsApp is something that's actually our largest sharing platform now, which suggests that that's the way that people are communicating on these issues. They're sharing them with the people that they know. So being able to share the platform really easily that way is really important as well. But certainly reaching out to the networks as well, all things considered, this kind of goes down the same routes as to how you would get any campaign out. So it's working out where those stakeholders are. I think there's been quite a lot of talk about the role that local authorities will play in this. So it's important that they're on board with the conversation and they're sharing it through their channels as well. But to engage younger audiences, it's about working with the schools, it's about working with the universities, and making sure that the conversation remains topical in all of those different news outlets as well. It might also be worth, Catherine, maybe giving a couple of sentences just about what the plan is to get the conversation out from your side, because I think that is something that's been considered as well. If I could maybe put you on the spot, Catherine.
Cheers, Amy. Yeah, I mean, I'm actually probably not the best person to talk about this. I don't know if Kate wants to come in on this. I know she's in the room, but no pressure. Yes, I mean, fairly established networks in terms of what the Commission already has engaged with previously, like Andy says about the development of the Climate Action Plan already had really good engagement with them. So it's all about identifying those key people, key networks across the region. But yes, I don't know if Kate wants to come in on that.
There's still quite a lot of questions to go, to be fair. So
fair enough.
Maybe we'll take that as an opportunity to move on, but hopefully I answered the question as much as I could anyway. Thanks, Andy.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, in terms of getting the word out and encouraging more people to get involved, please do, all of you, spread the word on this and help us to address this issue. It is something the Commission focuses on a lot. We have a communities and engagement panel, and we are trying on, you know, obviously to reach different communities and different voices that we don't hear from enough. On the next question from Debbie Trebilco, Debbie has asked a question around planning and maybe especially national parks. And again, just to answer this, heritage and conservation areas and national park planning policies are absolutely part of the conversation around retrofit in particular. We have another session coming up on plannings shortly, so please do feed in on that more broadly. But yeah, completely agree. I think there's a strong view that sometimes relaxing heritage or conservation area or national planning guidelines to enable effective responses to the climate emergency is required. And yeah, if you can make that point at some point, then that would be very welcome. So thank you, Debbie. Moving on then to Martin Spears, a conversation on water, and also raises a good point about what the future sessions will be. Absolutely, there are future sessions on water, and you're completely right. They do spread or span across adaptation, mitigation, nature, and a number of other areas. So yeah, that's a good point that we need to connect these together. And there is a question in the list of questions about how one issue relates to others and how we can do this in a joined up way. But also in terms of future sessions, yes, we will circulate the plan and the schedule for all of the forthcoming sessions so that you can feed into those as well. Just looking at my other questions. Sorry, it's jumping around a little bit on my screen. We have a question from Dave Merritt in York. Thank you, Dave. Asking about trusted suppliers and supply chains. Again, maybe I can answer this one quickly. I think that jobs and skills are a key dimension of what the Commission is trying to do. We know all too well that skills shortages are pushing up the price and slowing down the rate of change that's available, and therefore investing more in developing jobs and skills for retrofit, but also for a range of other areas is a key aspect in enabling all of this to happen more effectively, and making sure that the benefits of all of this stay in the region, that we create jobs along the way as well. Sorry, I've seen that I've jumped a couple of questions. Next, we had a question from Daniel Haley. As the owner of a renewables company, thanks, Daniel, for your question. Again, this relates to jobs and skills to some degree. One of the things we're thinking about in this space is consolidating the pipeline, if you like, and getting all of the local authorities and housing associations and others to say what retrofit they will be doing, where and in what year. And hopefully by developing that kind of confidence in a future stream of work, people will find it easier to invest in skills development, individuals, companies, skills providers, and so on. But as I just said, I think we recognize this is a major challenge. I think, Joyce, that also relates to your question. Sorry, I'm dealing with these as a package around retrofitting in listed buildings. Again, we know that heritage buildings are a challenge and that we need to be doing more in that space. And that point is very well made. Steve Mason then asked a question about benchmarking the data and biodiversity gain. Sam, is that another one I could hand back to you?
Sorry, Andy, I can't see that one on my screen. Can you read it out for me?
Oh, sorry, it's the last. Sorry, my.
Oh, there we go. It's just come up.
Yeah. Jumping around. It's the bottom one, which may not be the right order.
Yeah, great question. Thanks, Steve. So we're doing a session actually next week on nature's recovery, and we're going to be looking at things like that. So how we've got how we're going to benchmark progress, how we're going to understand where we're at, and obviously the never-ending question of shifting baselines in the region and how we deal with that. So that's something we'll be exploring next week. So hopefully we'll have more information about that. And also our panel chair for Land, Water, Nature, Food is Rachel Bice, who is CEO of the Yorkshire Wildlife Trust. And they're working at the moment on a kind of state of nature in the region report, which will be very valuable to us moving forward. So that's trying to garner all of the data that we've got available in the region and to kind of pick up the gaps that we need to start looking at. So yeah, hopefully some more on that in the future.
Great, thank you, Sam. And one last question before I think we have to tie up. A question from Liz Sharp, which is about retrofitting not only for energy, but also for water. Kat, is that one you can answer quickly?
Yeah, I think it links to something I wanted to add about the heritage question, which was, I think, one of the key points that we've come to through this process, is this idea that at the regional level, one of the most important things that we can kind of provide is that sharing of best practice. And I think that relates to both heritage and the climate resilience. These are challenges that I don't think we worked out the answer to in the paper, but they're questions that will be asked across the region. And one of our roles is to kind of to support the sharing of best practice, to support the sharing of answers to these complicated questions. So it doesn't fully answer your question, but I think it kind of demonstrates the role that we're going to take as a region.
Thank you, Kat. And yeah, just to reiterate the point I made earlier, absolutely we need to look at things in a joined up way. And, you know, retrofit is about mitigation, but it's also about adaptation. It's also about nature. Yeah. It just highlights the importance of that kind of joined up thinking. So thank you, everybody, for joining us today. It's been great to have you with us. We really hope we can kind of enroll you as ambassadors and, you know, promote us to spread the word about Commonplace, and then, you know, our real desire to hear from people, their thoughts and feedback on different proposals. So if you do go to Commonplace, please do use the surveys and the map, show what's happening across the region. If you leave your email address there, we'll also be able to notify you of new surveys and news and updates and so on. So, you know, you'll see all of the new things that are coming through on Commonplace over the next year or so. And then more broadly, you know, we hope that you'll engage with the work of the Commission more broadly. If you leave your email address, we can then contact you and let you know of other public engagement events like this one, and all of the other work of the Commission as we move forward. So thank you again. Thanks to all of our speakers today for feeding in. Thank you for joining and giving us an hour of your time. Please do feed in to Commonplace and, you know, work with the Commission as we move forward. Thanks very much and have a lovely evening.